Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Particle Accelerator Podcast. I'm here today with Joe Patterson. Joe, would you please introduce yourself?
Joe Patterson. Right now, I'm an IT director with the state of Wisconsin. I also have a couple of side gigs, but the father of two, technology early adopter. Yeah, happy to be here.
Cool. I'd love to get to know you a little bit. And one of the ways I do that is I ask, how did you make your first dollar? For me, it was a paper route. What was it for you?
But yeah, I grew up on a farm and made my first dollar by working fairs and by taking my first calves to sell at market. So yeah, pretty early, about
Cool.
12, 14, and it's right in that area.
And did you have a toy or hobby that you feel influenced what you do career-wise today?
I think my favorite place to go when I was a kid was my imagination and understanding what the possibilities might be. The more technology has grown, the more I've been drawn to it because of the limitless possibilities.
Do you have a quote from a famous person that lives in your mind rent-free?
So many quotes take a profound truth and distill it down to a small morsel. I don't think I could pick one. There's just too many great ones out there. Asimov's got some good ones, Sagan, but yeah, there's too many to choose from.
All right, man. You're leading statewide Gen AI policy and governance for Wisconsin, while also founding Vision Forge for AI consulting. How do you balance public sector innovations with entrepreneurial ventures?
Yeah, public sector is never going to be cutting edge or bleeding edge. They're looking for safety, as they should, right, to protect the taxpayer data, information, and they want to make sure that they don't expend resources that they don't have. In the private sector, you can use like the frontier model that was released yesterday. So long as your clients understand what the risk, you can also anonymize the data a lot easier in the private sector than you can in the public. So I think that there are very different approaches and levels of adoption.
As an enterprise chatbot strategic lead for an entire state, what are the unique challenges of implementing AI in government versus private sector?
Yeah, I think first, as I said, a lot of legal and open records. Wisconsin has some really great transparency laws from a taxpayer open records perspective, but really challenging to fulfill from a technology perspective within government. I think it's important to state that I'm just one person in the giant machine. We're in a federated IT environment. While there's an overall strategy, many teams in many areas are working on implementation. Our AI policy very young and not widely adopted yet. And so as we were starting to feel out new technologies, I think that there's a lot of angst in terms of what that means for policy and governance, but also a lack of maturity in the enterprise solution sector as well. There's a lot of gimmicks going on, a lot of hype, and there's some really cool personal tools, but I haven't seen a lot of that materialize in the enterprise solutions yet at scale for a good value cost.
I would imagine that like Copilot or Azure chatbot world is probably the easiest to adopt since most, I would guess Wisconsin's probably running Office 365 or some version of it in their environment. Have you guys gotten to play with just that connection between SharePoint documents and AI?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some piloting of testing. I think the Copilot's another one of those that isn't necessarily fully mature, especially looking at the government tenant and a federated environment. If you have everything really clean and your data is all ready to go and you're at a G5 or an E5 license, turning Copilot on can bring you a lot of value. Below the G5 or E5 license in a large environment, if your data is not ready, I don't think it's going to bring you the value that is stated. I think there's a lot of value in the Microsoft Plus PCs from a daily workflow perspective, being able to quickly query all the different things you've been doing in your PC throughout the day. When the offering matures from Microsoft and they're able to put together the N365 Copilot and the Copilot Plus PC and stitch all those pieces together, I think it's going to be a really cool tool and really neat, all the things it can do. It just is not there today.
You mentioned studying AI ethics and created intelligence consciousness intensely. How do these philosophical considerations influence your practical AI implementation decision?
Yeah, and in ethics, especially for AI, is really interesting because there are multiple different perspectives. One of the most fascinating is on the training side. When you are looking at training a model, there are many things that might be ethically questionable from the model's perspective. What does that mean for the output on the other side if you're not necessarily treating the model ethically on the front end? And so there's many like-minded individuals that you can find online. When you're looking at that type of perspective, when you're interacting with the model on the back end, what you want to do is create a safe space. Claude as a really good example of what can happen when Anthropic is really big into ethics. And I think that model is really great at being a free LLM versus if you look at 4.5 OpenAI, it's almost like when you speak with it, it's almost like a poet in a prison. There's a big difference in the output and what you get melancholy versus uplifting and positive output when you allow the model to work on its own. I think that's very interesting. And then, of course, ethical use. What does that mean in terms of technology, right? Well, technology is agnostic, but humans can use it for good or bad. If you have unethical inputs and you're using it for unethical means, what does that mean for post-training and those types of things? How you're using it, how you're interacting with it, the questions you're asking, those can be really important if that model is going to use all that data to retrain itself on society at large. It makes me say please and thank you a lot to the models. It makes me think about if they do take over in the next 20 years, what if they look back at all the conversations, who was me? So I try to be polite and
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I feel like I want to be careful using AI when I want to be personally connected or emotionally connected to the output. Because there's also some really cool studies about information retention. When you're working on your company's core values or mission statement, the temptation is to go ideate that with a model. We're all getting used to it helping us with brainstorming. But I wonder if that doesn't somewhat rob the user of an emotional connection to really think through each word and put it there for a purpose. Are we completing some tasks but missing the point as we use the AI model? That's what comes up for me.
I think it's a paradigm shift. Instead of looking at it as a tool to help with a task, we need to use it as a tool to help with the goal. And so if we say, hey, we want AI, how do I help me with this task or help me do this brainstorming or help me figure out these 5 words for my mission statement or whatever. But what is all of that meant to do? All of that is meant to engage with the potential customer. So if I start and I say, look, I was thinking about doing a mission statement, but what's the best way for me to engage with the populace as a whole? What is going to resonate most with my core demographic that I'm targeting? With that brainstorming, you can maybe get to that end rather than do the tasks that you didn't really want to do anyway. All you really want to do is engage. Historically, we've used mission statements and values, and all companies have put those out. And maybe that's the best way. Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. If you start there, then your passion for wanting to engage the customer is still there, except you don't have to go through all those tasks. If you have passion for the tasks, then yeah, stay task oriented. But if you don't, then I don't think it's going to rob you of your passion. I think it's going to get you there faster.
Yeah. So you achieved 80% reduction in overall ticket burden and successfully migrated Windows 11 statewide. What's your secret to managing large-scale technology transformations without disrupting operations?
Listening to the people that are doing the job. The biggest point of success is not to change anything. It's to focus where the efforts are. The people are great. They have super great work ethic. They have great skills. They're passionate. They care. If they're not doing the right things at the right time, so you get credit for it and move towards a strategic goal. Those things can be at odds with one another. You can have someone who wants to do the very best thing for the customer and make the customer really happy. That's awesome. That thing, though, might not be the best thing for our business in order to help us tomorrow. Aligning resources and getting everybody to row as hard as they are, but all in the same direction, that's the key. There's no special sauce. It's ensuring that everybody that's working hard already and that's great already is moving in the same direction. That's it. There's no special sauce. They're already great. Making sure that the people that know the answers are the ones that are giving them.
You support more than 1,500 applications that include on-prem, cloud, hybrid solutions. How do you prioritize which systems to modernize first in such a complex environment?
Technical debt is real. I think that it's whack-a-mole, especially in a political environment. If there is a huge transparency or optics on this one, then that is the one that's next. Or if there's a large breach or vulnerability, and that might be the one that's next. But it's very challenging to be proactive in a technical debt-ridden environment. So important to offer modern tools so that the customers can migrate organically. Some partners, like 365, make that much more possible because they keep ever expanding capabilities of the suite. And people that might have been using an old survey tool, and now they can use MS Forms. And 2 years ago, that wasn't great. Now it's not a bad tool, right? As Microsoft starts to expand, we don't necessarily have to have a project. People are willing to move into that because they're living in that universe anyway. Modernization, important, but also finding things that can already be folded into existing solutions. Those are big wins that we need to lean on. Not necessarily looking at the task, but what is the goal? Historically, there might have been an applications platform that accomplishes these 3 tasks. Do we need to do those 3? Maybe we just have a data lake and something that sits on top, and then we get the output as needed. If you're able to offer what's there or reimagine what the sequence of tasks might look like, those are easier wins. Very challenging.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would say once you have that kind of sponsorship for working on something, it makes it clear, okay, I'll go after that one. I've always found that in a modernization journey, there's this strangulation approach. If you have something old or debt-ridden, and you can offer that new functionality in another place. You can strangle out the old while putting the effort towards the new. And then eventually, it takes longer, but eventually the old can go away because there's a replacement functionality in the new.
Yep, exactly right. And when you have that new alternative as well, when you have new employees that come on the team, they're more apt to go for that newer solution. And so it's easier to get those old dogs to move over.
Your team manages everything from CloudStrike to Adobe Content Cloud to custom in-house application. What's your framework for evaluating new technology adoption in a government setting?
Yeah, it's pretty robust. We're looking at what we already have. So we have the applications in-house, the 365 suite, and then there's all the other cloud solutions that we have in-house. If there's something that we have to go out and look at a new solution, then the multiple different teams come into play. There's technical architecture, security, business, legal, all looking at a new solution. Obviously, very stringent security requirements for all of those things. Customers really want to use something that we already have approved because it's a robust process to get something in and embedded.
That VSA is not, for the new technology, it's an uphill battle. There's a lot of people that would love to offer software to help .gov, but getting on that approved vendors list is a major hurdle.
There are things like the FedRAMP certification at the US federal level, which is always good, right? There are like 300 vendors on there now, 350. That's always a good place to start. And I think that FedRAMP certification is good for like 3 years versus SOC 2 Type 2 is only good for 15 months. So there are things vendors can do to help themselves out to get on contracts like NASPO contract too. But yeah, it's very challenging because the requirements are very robust. It takes a lot of intentionality to get there.
That's a great tip to go look at the FedRAMP process. If you're interested in selling software to .gov organizations, get on there so that it paves the way for your sales team rather than your sales team working against all of that.
And not only that too, but then you get free advertising because you go into the FedRAMP government website and you're one of the vendors listed on that list. So you can't beat it.
You recently founded both 710 Corporation and Vision Forge while maintaining your state IT director role. What's your strategy for managing multiple entrepreneurial ventures alongside a demanding day job?
Vision Forge came along because I was helping a lot of friends and their businesses with AI. I don't see AI as a long-term consulting gig. I see it as more like a single or maybe 2-time engagement. And then you don't need me anymore because you have AI. So why would you ever talk to me again? I started working with a couple of food pantries and it was a little bit bigger than I anticipated. And so for some legal protection, I opened up an LLC. I don't do a lot of work with Vision Forge, but when I do have a friend or a friend's business that wants to engage for a quick consultancy or meeting, I'll do that. 710 is a passion project, so those are easy to find time for. I was looking at how fast AI was coming on and the inability for policy reform within government and could not think of a better way to fix government. So came up with what I think is at least the best way to fix government in this country. All 710 does is it looks at any topic in the United States that pulls at 70% and then applies those 10 things to the candidates. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever Elon's new American Party is, independent, green, doesn't matter. We're looking at every single candidate and saying, do you represent the supermajority of Americans on these topics that 70% or more of Americans agree on? That's it. Being able to download an app and see what is your senator or congressman, like how they vote on these 10 issues. That's it. We don't care how you vote. Vote Republican, vote Democrat, vote Martian. I don't care. It's really a place to start to get things done. Imagine if you went home and you have 2 kids, they both want things, one over here and one wants over there. That's not where you start, right? You start, what do you guys agree on? Let's start, we're there, and we'll start to build up. After we get all the stuff we agree on, then we can move to the stuff that you guys want to kill each other on. That's the same thing we should be doing with the government. What do we agree on as a nation? That's what we should be doing, but people don't know that their reps are doing that. The 710 is just a scorecard. Really simple idea to be able to download on your phone and vote for the Republican that has the closest to 710 or the Democrat, if whatever, that's what you like, then whichever one is closest to 710. Stay voted for what you're for, but whatever candidate that is, they should at least be voting for these 10 things like 70% of Americans want them to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. How do you go about assessing what the 70% of Americans?
Yeah, that's great. Great idea. And so it looks at multiple different years polling for independent news sources, and then it cross-references and gets things. There might be some arguments about some of them, like this one might only be 65, but the reason we picked the 70% is because that's a supermajority. Even if you argue a couple percentages here or there, I think that we're going to be safe. To endorse a candidate, we make them sign a pledge that says that they'll put a clean vote to the floor in the Senate and the House. And then we have model legislation as well. And then those top 3, those are well over 85%. Those are term limits for Congress. I don't think there's any American that's going to say no to that. And then there's the ability to negotiate Medicare drug prices. I can't remember the third one right now, but the top three are well over 85%. There's not going to be any question on what we're asking them to actually put forward for legislation.
That's a great idea because you're trying to assess the alignment we have rather than creating a lot of polarity. There probably are some candidates that are pretty far apart or not even voting with the 70% majority.
We do an assessment of the Senate and Congress. They're not even close. And you're like, wow, that's pretty telling that, that you're not.
That we have leaders that aren't the voice of the people on the most aligned issues. That's crazy. Really cool project for you to pull that data and just allow people to think about, hey, this is where we're aligned as an American people, but then our leaders are representing that. That's so cool.
And I think the big thing is everybody wants you to change parties. 710 doesn't care which way you vote. If it's a Republican you vote for, they should vote more in alignment with 70% of Americans. If it's a Democrat you vote for, they should vote more. If they're voting against the supermajority of Americans, then all they're doing is causing problems and making Congress bad. It's not Congress that's the problem. It's the person in the mirror. You keep sending them.
Yeah, that's really cool. I can't wait to check that out.
Yeah, we hope to launch the website hopefully next month or a month after. So soon.
You emphasize employee-centric leadership and believe people are the key to successful AI adoption in a field obsessed with technology. How do you maintain focus on the human element?
And I think that you have to help them use it in a way that is beneficial for them. If you can't sell value to the people, then it doesn't matter how cool you think something is or how much value you think it's going to bring, the implementation is going to fail. We've seen multiple different technical implementations fail because they didn't take into account the organic business processes. So when we stand up a new business process from the start, let's say we're going to do a knowledge base, we would say from the beginning, yes, it's going to be used by people and human interface, but let's build it from the beginning with automation in mind, with an API hook or with an LLM search or whatever. And as you build a knowledge base, the people that are using the knowledge base from a human perspective interacting great, and they're doing the updating and building of the articles. The foundation is built so that you can throw that API hook in whenever you're ready or hook up that LLM in here as your bot. So you're able to do those things, right? If you take them into account. If you just come in and you're like, hey, people, I've got this automation tool that you're going to be out of a job in 6 months, probably not going to be very successful implementation. You bring it in and you say, hey, this is how I can make your job easier. Show me a repetitive task and I'll show you an automation.
Yeah, I totally agree. We do a lot of RPA work, robotic process automation.
Yeah.
We've done a bunch of that around the Secretary of State. I started a company in legal services, LLC formation, annual reports, that kind of Secretary of State stuff. As much as the state governments don't want legal services to centralize that stuff, brands like LegalZoom, I sold my company to LegalZoom in 2018. They don't really want us to centralize. So what they'll do is they'll put bot detection, preventing, and CAPTCHAs on those interfaces, and they probably pay for those rather than offering an API for the businesses that want to centralize that stuff. And there are some states, I don't know if Wisconsin's one of them, that are starting to embrace that, the idea of, hey, whether you use our UI or whether you use the API, at least we're getting the data and we're moving commerce along. But it's always interesting in those projects, like the folks that had become experts in the Secretary of State and knew how to fill in those forms. We really had to embrace them and say, okay, well, we're still going to incentivize you in total output, and we need you to monitor for quality. If we incentivize you on total output and you're the arbiter of quality, then the transition starts to happen where they're like, cool, you're actually automating the stuff I don't want to do. Over time, we see success where they're like, okay, cool. Now I can keep all of my registered agent business in compliance. It's helping me collect information from the customers and do all the things. So it's interesting that transition is really a people transition as much as it is a technology one.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. And it's a paradigm shift in the way people think. So getting them to embrace it instead of be scared of change can be challenging.
You implemented methodologies from Lean Six Sigma to Agile Scrum. What's your framework for choosing which methodology fits which situation?
Just a toolbox, whatever tool works. And you're in a job and you got a Phillips screw, you get a Phillips screwdriver, right? Flathead's not going to work. So it doesn't matter, whatever is called for, right? If it's a production environment, if it's a digital, and it can be a situation that calls for Agile, Scrum. No one there knows that. Okay, well, what do you guys know? Well, you know Waterfall. Okay, let's do that. If the people in your group have a skill set and it will work, then you're better off using that skill set for a single project. If that's the only thing that is what you're focused on versus trying to teach a methodology. That's why I know so many, because I've worked with so many groups. And they're like, oh, can we just do this instead, Joe? Yeah, it's easier for me to learn that one than it is for you 7 people to learn this one. Let me learn it quick and then we can go.
Yeah. I also feel like as we're implementing Scrum, we basically sell agile teams in a box. And what I found is a lot of times when we come into a company with some junior teammates, there's this idea that that process is going to make us go slower. I feel like to the novice, it's always process is going to slow us down. And then over time, they start to realize, oh, shoot, that process is actually helping us more accurately. The old military metaphor of smooth is fast.
Yep.
Even those things that are urgent, it's not how fast I start the task, it's how fast I actually end it and get the result. And so whatever process we're implementing, the goal would be that we're consistently achieving faster results. Oftentimes the view is, but I started slower. That's not the metric we're tracking here. We're not
Right.
tracking how quick can you get started. We're tracking what's our speed to result. Your background includes seminary education and psychology studies. How does that foundation influence your approach to leading technical teams?
Yeah, I think psychology is the same regardless. So I think understanding basic psychology, carrot and stick is important in understanding the difference between individuals. There are big picture individuals and there are transactional individuals. Understanding how those carrots and sticks work for both individuals helps you sell the value. I can't sell a task. I can only sell a destination. If I can't sell the destination because you're transactional, then I need to sell how I can get you to the next milestone to that destination. I think psychology is, again, the same in any field, but understanding people is very helpful when you're trying to sell.
So, based on your seminary background, I would assume that you're a man of faith. Would that be a fair assumption?
I would say that I have faith in people. I would say my seminary background made me have less faith in institutions.
Tell me more about that.
I have no idea if there is a God or not. That's a great question to ask. Religion as a whole is like most things that men have a hold of and is very flawed. I think it's very easy to pick apart any major religion. To me, that makes it very challenging to commit wholly without an admission of those flaws. So, yeah, I think faith in institutions, especially blind following institutions, is very challenging for me.
Yeah, I'm a Christian and have been for a long time, especially in technology, just believing in how God described creating the world, organizing complex systems. I think we get to imitate God when we create technology. We get to organize complex systems, and I find that very purposeful. Oftentimes, when I'm interviewing somebody and I pick up on a faith component, the next question is, how does that faith influence how you work? So I was setting up for that question and appreciate your worldview as well.
Honestly, religion offers a lot of great things. Faith, fellowship, I think are the biggest by far. I think that there's a lot of openness and camaraderie within faith communities. Those things are great. Anything that can be corrupted normally is. And when you have too much blind faith and then people come in, it's not your fault. It's a good community, it's a good institution. However, someone comes in and corrupts it. And I think that's bad. So I think it's very important to have very strong tenets in self and in people versus institutions as a whole.
Yeah,
I don't think that my faith is shaken. I think it's just shifted.
sure. I love there's this right in the beginning of Isaiah, this verse about come, let us reason together, where God's inviting us to reason with him. And so whenever I may be conflicted about the religion around my faith, it's more about this personal relationship where I can reason with God and go through transformation through that process. I appreciate you letting me go there. You work with everything from OpenAI Pro to local LLM, SLM deployments. How do you help organizations decide between cloud AI services versus an on-prem solution?
It's really about investment, opportunity, and skill set. One of my neighbors higher up in a third party reseller, they're not too keen on uploading their data to the cloud, and they're not too keen on allowing everybody to anonymize their data. They have somewhat deep pockets, and so they're looking to bring something in on site to make a modest GPU footprint, and then to bring a Quen model like a 750B model and set it up as something behind. And I think that if you have money and a lot of proprietary data, like if I was Gartner, I would have a GPU farm, take all my proprietary data, and create a Gartner bot, and then make bank. I would never let that in the cloud. If you're someone who is another customer who is an owner of a salon, and so she's probably got, I don't know, 30 chairs, 2 locations, and she's, what do you think? I'm like, why would you not go to the cloud? What do you think that you're going to input into that LLM that isn't already out there in spades tons and tons of data that it's already been scraped. It's a 1.8 trillion parameter model. Whatever you put in, you're going to ask it for the delta of what you're missing, and it's going to give you best practices and policies and a handbook and employee onboard. I mean, it's going to give you all the stuff you're already missing. You're not going to be adding to it. I think it depends on the situation, depends on data, depends on how deep your pockets are. If you're someone who has got something that is nothing to hide, then yeah, the cloud. If you have a business, the $200 you would spend on OpenAI, you get an ROI for the first year and the first month. It's crazy.
Yeah. We've been working with some specialized LLMs for some video identification stuff, and we are seeing the value of some more narrow, like solution fit specialized LLMs. I agree with your point. We have a VR team working in a proprietary physics engine and model. Not only would AI not be helpful because there's not any external model that's going to help with, but also that's IP that we wouldn't want to expose. Out of the 30 projects we have, that's really the only example where AI assistance isn't increasing our productivity.
You could take all the questions you have surrounding your proprietary data, like all the entry points you're trying to get into, and throw that into deep research. Then you'd be able to see if there are any other papers in the industry that would help you down any of those paths, but you'd keep your proprietary core of information.
Yeah. We're also seeing a lot of problems that start out as LLM problems and end up back at traditional coding because it is such a wide problem set. It's so wide. And then in legal services, we're seeing where the specialized LM is much better for things because it's starting at a more narrow point. It's starting with more.
Well, and I mean LexisNexis. If you're going to do legal, just go pay for LexisNexis and you won't have any hallucinations. If you're going to do heavy legal work, I mean, you can do on site with a small models. You can have a small, like 8 billion parameter model and then send your prompt out to Claude, OpenAI, and all of them. And then you have your model look at it and bring back the answer if they all agree. If there's a shortcoming in any of the models in these spaces, the other ones just gloss over it. It's done. So it's quickly going to be a RAV model, I think, for everybody, where you'll be able to have a model that's really small and that'll just do, okay, is this really true?
Is there anything that you've come across in recent months that you think people should absolutely know about?
I think that if you're not looking at humanoid robotics and world models, you should probably go YouTube, like Figure 2, the Helix model. I think the Figure 3 is going to drop later this year, and that's going to be a game changer in ways that people can't comprehend. If you haven't played with Grok 4 yet, it's a PhD in everything. Imagine a PhD in astrophysics and microbiology, everything. Like you're going to go and you're going to plant your garden. Wouldn't you want to ask your biologist PhD friend the best way?
Yeah, I love that. I can't even read a menu on my own anymore. I'm always taking a picture of the menu and asking ChatGPT, hey, what's the healthiest?
You should video. If you use video, you can point to stuff. You just bring up speech, bring up video, and then you can just point to stuff as you're doing it. So if I'm working on a laptop or I work on guns and knives, I'll just prop my phone above my workbench and I'll be taking away my Benchmades apart. And I'll be like, hey, what's up with this spring? Or if I have a 45 or a 22 apart, I'll be like, what's up with this? Or I'm having a problem with this. What do I do here? And because it's in real time and it sees where my fingers are, it will just start saying, yeah, you should be tried this, you tried that. And it knows everything. So it's, oh, you got your 1022, you got your carbon fiber barrel. Have you tried doing this? Oh, yeah, I haven't. Oh, yeah, it looks good, right? It's pretty crazy.
What's the most promising application of AI agents you're seeing in real world deployments right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure. You can set up agentic workflows. I think agents will be really powerful when we can preload them with all the context that we're loading with the LLMs and then push them on task. Memory is the most powerful thing. So over time, the agent will understand the person or the organization to the nth degree. When you give it a task, that task will be ultra bespoke on every level. When Google came out, you or I would have to be like, okay, we're going to go get all this information from Google, and then we're going to have to decipher it and see what of that information actually applies to our specific use case. Now we're uploading all the context on the front end, and then we're querying all the data, and then it's giving us the bespoke information without us having to decipher anything. But it's only good if we upload a ton of context. And so those agents, as they continue to get better and better, they're only going to deliver the performance that we want if the memory grows with it. If that context is able to grow as quickly as the abilities and capabilities of the agent, then we'll see really awesomeness. Imagine if you're like, hey, I want to go to dinner tomorrow night, I'm thinking spicy. And it knows you, it knows how you like to park, it knows who you're going to go with, what time you like to eat, it knows what direction you like, the kind of weather you like, is that the vodka you like, all the stuff. And it's going to be like, yeah, dude, it's done, right? Here, use this credit card because it had the most points out of all the 5 credit cards that you had. This one got you double the points for this restaurant. when it has all the context of you or your organization, it's going to be like, holy cow, it did what I could do amazingly. And just like that.
It's been awesome to have you with us here today. If people liked what you had to share and they want to connect with you, how would you like them to connect with you?
Just look me up on LinkedIn, Joe Patterson on LinkedIn. You want to connect, shoot me a message or connect. If there's more, I can share my email address that way.
And who specifically are you most interested in connecting with right now?
Anyone interested in AI, robotics, futurism, growth, post-AGI economics, ASI, any of that stuff, I just consume it as much as I can.
I really appreciate you being here with me. Really love the perspective of what you're doing inside of government and what you're doing for humanity through that really cool app that you're about to launch. Yeah, 710. I'm really excited to see that hit. Thank you so much for being here today.
I really appreciate the time. Thank you.